I'm Erica Hollingsworth, and you're listening to the F1 podcast.
What's up, everyone? It is Richie here from the F1 podcast, bringing you season 4, episode 10. And boy, it is race week. It's good to be back. I'm here with my lovely co host, Erica Hollingsworth. Erica, how y'all doing?
I'm doing well. How are you doing today, Rachie?
The weather is a little crappy in Toronto. We had beautiful sun Monday, Tuesday, but hopefully a better weekend to start the week.
That's the way it goes in spring, but I'm hopeful that a little bit of rain follows up with a lot of sunshine. So we'll see how that one plays out for us.
That we're going to be at Trinity Common for the Miami Grand Prix. So we will be back May 5th at 4 p.m. So we'll be on site around 3:30. We do have 20 spots at our section. If you would like to be part of our section and sit with us, please send us a message on Instagram at the F1.podcast. If you would like to make your own reservation, please call Trinity Common at 647-346-3030 or send them an email info@trinitycommon.com. We would love to see you there. I know we already have about, I think, 5 or 6 confirmed. So we're just really excited to be back and actually watch races at a reasonable time. Mostly excited about that because it's hard to
Not
watch a
in the
race
middle
at
of the
3.
night, not first thing in the morning, in the afternoon. And I'm excited because I was away the first couple of times that we were at Trinity this season. So for me, it'll be great to go back, catch up, maybe have a pint, relax with some folks. And yeah, if you're interested in stopping by, would love to see some familiar faces, some unfamiliar faces, whatever floats your boat. So drop us a line at f1.podcast, as Richie said, on Instagram if you want to sit with us.
Yeah, I would say we're kind of cool.
Cool in our own circles at the very least, and that's what matters.
Erica, Andrew, and I can attest that people were asking about you at the bar, like, where is Erica from the F1 podcast? And we said,
Guys.
well, we're not her, so
Do a barrel roll.
But I am me, and I'll be there. So that'll be nice. Oh, whoever was asking about me, thanks.
Yeah.
And yeah, you guys. But let's get into it. We got some stuff to talk about this week, Richie.
Red Bull won the Japanese Grand Prix heading to China. There is still speculation. We're still trying to figure out if Sergio Perez is going to get that number 2 spot. And with seeing Ferrari's dominance, or not dominance, but Carlos Sainz really driving to his full potential in a situation where he still does not have a spot next year. We're seeing a pretty intense battle.
I would say so. We've seen a few people switching around. Like, obviously, Max is in that first spot and pretty dominant, but we've seen Leclerc and Sainz putting pressure on Perez and, like who's in second? Oh, they're in third this week. And it is closer than I'd say what we saw last year for certain. I know that we've talked about it before, and there have been a few people who have commented on this as well, but there is still that Red Bull dominance. But we did see it with Signs too, where once there's that one car in P1, it's pretty easy to run away with it. However, to know that at least we have 2 cars that are able to put that kind of space between it makes me a little bit more hopeful for some excitement. But those 2 teams are really kind of leading the charge right now, hands down.
And I think especially just given that some of the focus has been mostly on them, and just the fact that Carlos still does not have a seat for next year, and he's still trying to prove himself if he felt like he'd been shafted by the Lewis Hamilton coming in 2025. So it's been interesting to kind of see that play out. And then you just look at some of the other teams, whether if it's McLaren or some other teams that have just not yet to score a point this year. Williams, Kick Sauber, Alpine. And speaking about Alpine, I think, like, let's jump right into it. Bruno Famin on the future and their hope for recovery. They said that the team is absolutely not for sale. We have a real project with Alpine. He said, and he spoke exclusively via video call. We have the project to develop the Alpine brand awareness globally through motorsport and Formula One in particular. We have the full support of top management. The team is absolutely not for sale. We will keep pushing to reach our goals. And they've been kind of interesting to watch this season. Flat out embarrassing, to say the least.
My goodness, it has not been a good year and a bit for Alpine, that's for sure. And I don't disagree. Like, I think for us in North America, Alpine was kind of an offshoot of Renault, right? And Renault is a huge name in Europe, particularly in France. So I think there's quite a few people who see this as maybe a midfield, a smaller team, and they don't really realize the kind of investment and power and really overall expertise and stuff there is there. I know we're not seeing any of that expertise helping in any way, shape, or form. But I'm not surprised to hear that Alpine's very like, no, we're not for sale. They got that huge investment from a whole bunch of the like American celebrities and stuff last year. Like I think we saw Ryan Reynolds coming in, a few others as well.
Trent Alexander-Arnold's. I think he had
Yeah,
Patrick Mahomes.
right.
Uh,
Mahomes is part of it too.
yeah,
Forgot about that. That's a biggie. Um, so I really don't feel like they're in any kind of position where from a financial perspective, at least, they're feeling that pressure. I do think there's probably some of the longer term investors who might be starting to wonder if they keep wanting to put money into this team because it's been.
and we talked about like going into the start of the season. Well, we did indicate we think that Alpine was going to be that like weaker. And I can only imagine with like Pierre Gasly and Esteban Ocon still not been able to get any points this season, and where you have like Oliver Behrman who comes in for one race and he has more points than like probably like half the grid.
He does too. He's like in the top two-thirds of drivers right now. It's pretty funny. Yeah, and I think if you're Ocon, you're frustrated because you think about where the team was 2 years ago when you were driving with Alonso and, not running away with it, not putting pressure at the front of the grid, but performing much better and having, there were a couple podium finishes for them that year. Is I think 2022 is when he won the Grand Prix, or was that
Hungarian.
2021?
I don't quote me on that, but I think I'm gonna say probably 2022.
Either way, you go from being on a team that had some level of performance, you're scoring points a little bit more consistently. Like, I don't think in 2022 we would be surprised to see an Alpine in the front half of finishers, right? So, for him, I have to imagine it's frustrating because this is a team you've invested a good amount of time in now, who's probably made a lot of promises talking about development and continuous improvement and is not delivering on it. And if you're Pierre Gasly, you weren't loving life at AlphaTauri and you kind of knew where you stood in terms of your future development within the Red Bull organization. But again, you were fighting for points. You had, a few instances where again, we had Monza and he won Monza. But we also had, more frequent point scoring. And so for him to make the jump to Alpine, it's probably also pretty crummy to now be in this position where you're doing worse than you did when you were on a junior team in a supposed to be worse car than what you're doing now, than what you're driving now.
And
So I
just
have to imagine there's just frustration everywhere at all levels in the organization.
I still have that belief. Like it's a French manufacturer, two French drivers in a sport like Formula One. Like clearly, it's not a two. It should be a two-person team, but who's going to be that number one driver? And for the record, it was the 2021 Esteban Ocon won the Hungarian Grand Prix. So you mentioned an individual, Fernando Alonso, and it doesn't look like he's retiring anytime soon.
No, this guy just signed a multi-year contract at age 42 with Aston Martin. If you were to tell anyone 20 years ago, hey, in 20 years, you're going to have not only multiple drivers in their 40s, because Lewis Hamilton will be joining the 4-0 club soon enough, but you will be having these 40-year-old drivers signing like long-term contracts beyond the standard 1 or 2 years, they'd probably tell you that you're insane and that you are off your rocker and there's no way someone that age could keep performing at a high enough level that a team would even want to sign them for that amount of time.
And just so far that he's the not the excitement, but what he's been able to produce at Aston Martin. Like, mind you, do you remember his first 8 races combined for, I think it was 6 podiums in 2023. So clearly that he still has that gut and fire on all cylinders. I think the deal, it came out, if I'm just reading correctly, I think it's till 2026 and potentially beyond. Even if 2026 proves to be his final year at racing, he says he sees himself in other roles with Aston Martin beyond that point. So
I know people have joked about it time and again where he had that one injury or like concussion after a race where he thought he was 17 again. And there is the piece of me, we've talked about this at work and some places where a few folks about how much the mental belief can really drive the physical performance and other stuff of that nature. And I kind of wonder if in his mind he feels younger than he is. So it's allowing him to push things to a limit and perform away like some of these guys who are a little bit younger on the grid are, despite the fact that, your body at 20 and your body at 42 are very different. So I'm excited because I've always liked Alonso. I've always found him to be, charismatic, personable, works really hard, has a pretty good attitude. Like, obviously, he gets frustrated with stuff, but for a team like Aston Martin to have that faith, be backing it up by putting ink on the page with him and stuff like that, I'm hopeful. Like, this is a very exciting team to have watched evolve over the last 2 seasons in particular. And I'm excited to see what will come out of this.
We talked about Carlos Sainz earlier, but like, we talk about the silly season. Now we have that one position locked at Aston Martin. And I don't know what's happening with Lance Stroll, but now the questions is like, okay, is it for sure that Carlos, okay, it doesn't look like Carlos is going to go to Aston Martin. Is Mercedes now going to be the open seat? So we're kind of starting to see these puzzle pieces kind of start to be put together and kind of hoping to see like probably before the summer, probably before the summer break, we'll probably see the whole grid for next year already. So,
Yeah, I have a feeling we might hear it's going to be a busy summer break for sure. Um, I am curious what will happen. Lewis was an early announcement, Alonso was an early announcement, but we have so many open positions. There are 13 seats that have not
13.
been locked in. So we still don't know for sure who this other driver at Red Bull will be. Both of the drivers at Williams, so both Sargent and Albon, are up for negotiation at the end of this season. Both Zhou and Bottas are up for negotiation with Kick Sauber. That second seat at Mercedes needs to be filled. Neither Gasly or Ocon have re signed past this season with Alpine. Neither Ricardo or Yuki have a contract with Racing Bulls after this season, and neither K Meg or Hulkenberg have a seat guaranteed with Haas after
So,
2024.
so if I'm reading this correctly, so it's only Ferrari and McLaren that are have their two drivers set for next year.
That is correct. There are only two teams who know with pretty much complete certainty who they'll be working with next year. Do you know how hard that must be to plan? Like, I know we all want to think 2025 is farther away than it is, but especially with how forward thinking so many of these teams are in developing their car, if you don't even know who's in the car, and we know many teams take an approach where they do make some decisions about design based on who's in seat. I personally like I work in tech and we're flying by the seat of our pants all the time, but I have a pretty good idea of what the rest of this year in 2025 is going to look like, right? I can't imagine how there might be such an aggressive hard pivot for some of these teams in the next 8 months.
Well, I'm glad that Ferrari and McLaren at least have their together. If I can say it
It
right.
seems like it. Like, there's a few things I don't think we're gonna see crazy changes at Red Bull. Like, I feel Sergio's done well enough that everyone wants to talk about who's gonna be sitting next to Max, but I would honestly be very surprised were he not given that second seat again. I know people like to talk a big game, but I
Well,
personally
especially
don't think they're gonna rock the boat when things are going well.
yeah, and this is not like a season like last year where he did struggle during the qualifying periods
Exactly.
and especially trying to get into Q3. He's at least showed that he's Mr. Two. He's there to help and just be a team player. And you're if he's doing his part and being I think he's been in every other than once last this year. Yeah, other than second, five, and second. Like just
Yeah,
doing his job.
exactly. I do think We might see some shakeups at Racing Bulls. I think we're all anticipating that unless Daniel Ricciardo suddenly finds a little bit of the old Danny Rick in there, a little bit of that honey badger energy we're all used to having, I don't think we'd be surprised to see that he's no longer with Racing Bulls. I personally am also, from my standpoint, thinking that Gene Haas, if he has any say, is probably not going to renew K Meg and Hulkenberg. They had 2 seasons. They did better last year. This year's not going great so far. They're more tenured drivers who I'm sure are expecting bigger contracts than like a fresh seat, someone coming out of F2 or something like that. So I don't think they'll be there. Will be interesting to see what happens with Williams, where I think we may or may not see some change. I don't think Kick Sauber is particularly upset with the performance of either Bottas or Zhou. I feel like they kind of know who they are and what they're doing.
I think they need to figure out house in order first,
Yeah.
because I don't think that Bottas and Joe are the problem
No,
this season. It's just I think just the long pit stops, just the car itself, they got some improvement to be needed.
exactly. And I think that's the same for Alpine. I don't think the concern at Alpine is necessarily Ocon and Gasly. Of course, there's a little bit of headbutting there still, but I do think the majority of the issues the team has is in-house. And so I wouldn't be surprised to see, unless they're incredibly frustrated and another team makes a good offer, I don't expect to see them move. However, so many rumors flying around this week that Sainz was offered a contract at Mercedes. My brain kind of exploded when I saw some of those tweets and stuff come in because some of them were coming from people who always seem to have a very good pulse on what's going on in F1. And the fact that we didn't see anyone outright deny it when all these rumors were flying around, as we have seen in the past when rumors are flying around, makes me wonder if there could perhaps be a bit of negotiation going on there, which would
Uh
probably sting for you seeing him go from Ferrari to
yeah,
Mercedes.
I'm mentally struggling just thinking about that.
But
Uh,
with that said, you were talking about Bottas and Zhou, and to me, I just get warm fuzzies because I saw these cute images of Zhou showing Bottas around in China as they're like leading up to it, which just made me so happy. It was a downpour and they had their traditional little umbrellas, which I don't think were the most effective for keeping the rain away. But should we talk about this upcoming weekend in the Chinese Grand Prix?
Yeah, I think it's the first time they've been back since 2019. So we finally get to see a race in Shanghai. Also to note that it's the first sprint race of the weekend. So let's just kind of go a little bit into it. So it's hard to believe that it's been 5 years since the last race in China. Yeah, on the current grid,
Wow.
4 drivers have never raced in Shanghai: Oscar Piastri, Yuki Tsunoda, Logan Sargent, and homeboy Zhou. It's the first Chinese driver to race in Formula One, and apparently it is sold out.
I'm not surprised at all. I'm 0% surprised. We saw it in Japan when Japan opened up for the first time. Like, everyone was so excited to have a Grand Prix back after more time in between races that they've hosted because of, like, just what's been going on in the world the last few years.
Mhm.
And also, you have a driver representing your home country for the first time. There's got to be a ton of people who want to turn out for that.
And just like think about it, a lot has changed since 2019. I mean, you had Lewis Hamilton with Valtteri Bottas, you had Sebastian Vettel on the grid at one point, you had 4 champions. Just so it'll be interesting to kind of see like what will happen going into it this weekend. And I don't really remember that much in Shanghai or the Chinese Grand Prix specifically. I know there were some instances with Max Verstappen colliding with Sebastian Vettel. Sorry.
I'm
I
excited though, because I think for so many folks who are newer to the sport because of Drive to Survive, this is not a track that they're familiar with, and they probably haven't seen anyone race at before unless they've gone into the archives, right? Because for so many people, it was in the pandemic and onward that they got into the sport. So it'll be, I think, a ton of fun, just as like an event for people to go to and to take in. So I'm hoping that there's a lot of fun fan engagement, that the vibe at the track is immaculate because I think this race deserves that after so many years on hiatus. And I personally don't think McLaren will do that well, but I'm going to be cheering for Zhou. if things aren't doing that well, because I love to see drivers, especially the young drivers, at a first home race have the opportunity to really kind of like show their stuff in front of a home crowd because it just is so fun to hear everyone erupt in the stands as they go by.
But also, like, because I've said earlier, is this is the first sprint of the season, with a 100-kilometer dash set to make its first appearance before further sprints take place in Miami, Austria, Austin, Brazil, and Qatar. I think I got them all. This is really interesting. So the new rules, because they've changed some things out, there are no pit stops unless you're need repairs, and it should last around 30 minutes. The length of the sprint is intended to promote a dash that is, quote, dynamic rather than strategic, with an emphasis on attacking. I think some of the questions or concerns last year or earlier years was the sprints started to become more of a bore fest, and then I think they even tried to change it last year where they're only allowed to use certain tires on certain qualifications.
Yeah.
So I don't know, like I'm kind of hopeful. I think I'm very hopeful that they will at least make this weekend a little bit better, or the sprint a little bit better. I think it also gives like drivers like Joe and some of those other teams that are struggling another moment, a chance to kind of get points when they couldn't really get it during the race day.
Yeah, I'm excited to see how that plays out. I didn't know about some of those rule changes. I think it'll be interesting. I do hope that this results in a more dynamic race because people know that they can't come in and change tires partway through or something like that. Like it's got to be for a good reason that you're coming in. If anything, I'm just hopeful that this also makes it a little more fun. I know in previous years we've seen it where, people qualify, they're kind of just stuck in whatever position, people start racing, they lose any hope of progress they had before race day, even in quali. So I'm hopeful that this new format with the intention to promote attacking, more dynamic racing actually pans out. And I briefly hinted at it, but there's two DRS zones on this track, I believe, and also just seeing that one really long straight. And we know quite a few cars have struggled with some straight line speed this year, will be incredibly interesting because I think that'll be one thing where we might see so much happen around the turns elsewhere on the track. And all of that work in a lap could be undone in the blink of an eye if people are not paying attention or really on top of it. So I do think this will lend itself to be a very interesting weekend from a spectator standpoint.
So sprint qualifying is going to be split into three stages: SQ1, SQ2, SQ3. First one, 12 minutes, second one, 10 minutes, and then the third one, just 8 minutes. It follows a similar format to qualifying for Grand Prix, where like it's the five slowest drivers are eliminated after round one, five more, and then grid positions afterwards. That leaves 10 remaining drivers to battle it out for the top grid slots, with the fastest drivers starting for the front of the sprint, for those that don't know. And then just for just the calendar's sake, the sprint itself replaces FP3 on the Saturday. So hopefully I was able to explain that a little well. And for point system, first gets 8, second gets 7, third gets 6, 4 gets 5, 5 gets 4, 6 gets 3, 7 gets 2, 8 gets 1. And I'm really excited to see that straight away. Erica, there's going to be a lot of top speeds from a lot of the teams. I think particularly Red Bull and Ferrari. I'd be loving to see some of those DRS battles out there.
It'll be very interesting. Like I said, I was calling out McLaren specifically. Don't think it's going to help them a ton to have a big straight like that. But we are seeing a lot of people start to bring enhancements to the car. So we could be proven wrong. We could be taking things in a totally different direction without even knowing it.
On that note, we're going to end this week's episode off early. So I think the race time is Sunday at 3 a.m. if you want to stay up. Spoiler alert, we're not going to, but we'll wake up in the morning and watch it. Just really excited to kind of get back to a normalized schedule for us. Also, we do have a little treat for us when this episode comes out. One of our fans has made us a new artwork as we kind of explore this project a little more. Myself, Andrew, and Erica have been talking about what is not only the next step or in terms of rebranding. So When this goes out on our Instagram page, we're going to post the new art. And we would love to hear your opinions on it. And we really want this to be a fan-driven project. So if you are really talented in what is it, photo art, like you tell
Graphic
graphic
designs.
design, or I see what was it on Microsoft as a kid, Paint?
Microsoft Paint,
Yeah,
yeah.
if you can just rock good Microsoft Paint or something even in more advanced, like we're taking some submissions and we really want to hear from the fans. And honestly, like we want to get some, maybe we'll put it on some merch. Maybe you'll see it at Trinity Common. But we would really love to hear, love all the submissions and hear what you have about the first one that's going to come out on social media.
Yeah, we're coming up on 1,000 followers. It's a chance to take stock, think about things, and Richie hinted at some fun stuff we've been considering doing as we go forward too. So, absolutely, would love to see what you've got. Whether it's, I don't know, I think Microsoft Paint doesn't really exist anymore. I feel like they were here, I heard they retired it. But maybe you used Kid Pics back in the day and still have access to that. Photoshop, maybe you've got InDesign or any, maybe you're just like a big fan of like Canva and other stuff. I don't know. Can you tell I work with designers occasionally at work? I'm just listing random tools. But we would love for your input on this because you're the ones that have listened to us and got us to this point, and we want to know what you want to see going forward. And yeah, who knows? Fun designs and stuff. Maybe you see something fun come up at Trinity Common later. I don't know. Just throwing it out there.
And I think it's also 49 days till the Canadian Grand Prix.
Oh my gosh, that's so much sooner than I thought. That is so much sooner than I thought. Wow.
So we
And
have
for those of you who didn't see, the groundhogs are coming out. They're starting to put the grandstands up. It's all coming together. It is all coming together.
actually 53 days. So we have 53 days to get to 1,000 followers on Instagram. Let's make this happen leading into the summer months. And obviously, for those that don't know Montreal, but usually the Canadian Grand Prix kicks off the summer in Montreal. So we're also really super excited for that. On that note, hope you guys enjoy the Chinese Grand Prix this weekend and hope you love this week's episode. Andrew unfortunately couldn't make it, so myself and Erica took the lead this week. Make sure to follow us on social media at Instagram, TikTok, Twitch, YouTube,
All
Threads.
that good stuff.
Yes, all that good stuff. But we really appreciate all the support you give us. So make sure to tune into next week's episode of the F1 podcast. Signing off, season 4, episode 10. Thank you so much and have a great day.